Funny to talk about team because it is important. Team building, making people feel welcome, making people know that they're respected, let them know they're doing a good job. It's all part of it. People don't see that, do they? Only the people within the company know. I always felt my staff were behind me 100%. Mm-hmm. They knew how I felt about it. They knew how I appreciated it. I also gave them responsibilities as well.
This is The Summit by Fearless Adventures. I'm Dominic McGregor, and every week I will be talking to inspirational leaders about their experiences as they strive towards their summit.
Welcome to the Summit podcast. I'm joined today by Martin Edwards, previous chairman of Manchester United Football Club, and one of the leading forces in the breakaway of the Premier League in 1992. Thank you for coming on today. Looking forward to chatting to you about your experience, how you got to the top of what you did, stayed at the top for so long, and also pioneered something which, in my opinion, changed not just the footballing world, but the entire world, really.
Yeah, well, let's get to it.
I think let's start with the kind of early stage for you. You know, we're a company which looks at helping people on a journey, and that journey goes pretty quickly to the top of an entrepreneur life. You had a kind of similar experience in kind of getting thrown in the deep end a little bit with what you did.
I mean, I was in a family business, which was the meat trade, and I was managing director of sort of half the business, and my father was joint chairman with my uncle. So I had experience in business, and my father was chairman before me. He joined the board of Manchester United the day after the Munich air crash in 1958, and then became chairman in 1965 and was chairman for 15 years. I went on the board in 1970, so I had 10 years experience as a director before actually taking over from my father in 1980. And I'd also had the experience of being managing director of the retail side of the meat business before that. So I was fairly confident in business. But obviously it was a new venture, and it was quite a responsibility at the age of 34.
And how did you find those skills transfer from managing a meat company to managing a football club?
I mean, management's different. It's different because, I mean, one thing you're selling meat and you've got retail outlets and all the rest of it. The other side of it, you're running a football club. And in those days, when I first took over, there wasn't the business side of it that there is today. I mean, there was no shirt sponsors. You had the odd match game sponsor. What should we say? Merchandise sales were very, very small, if at all. So, you know, in 1980, when I took over, I think the turnover of Manchester United was something like £1 million.
Wow.
Pounds. You know, whereas you look at it today,
that's predominantly just gate receipts.
Just gate receipts. Television income in those days was £25,000. Every club got exactly the same. £25,000, yeah. Every club got the same. All 92 of the Football League clubs got £25,000 shared equally.
So was the meat business doing more revenue than Man United?
Our company was basically 20 million, of which I was responsible for half of it, say 10 million.
Yeah. So
I had a 10 million turnover with probably 200 outlets, retail outlets. Yeah. So, yeah.
So the Manchester United job was
1/10 in terms of turnover, 1/10 of the meat business. But of course, in terms of exposure, 100 times more, you know what I mean? So it was totally different.
God, that's crazy. So 1980, you know, football is everywhere, and, you know, you've got Liverpool, the great Liverpool team of the 80s, and it was taking responsibility for one of the biggest clubs in the UK. And then when did the idea for the Premier League happen, and how did it happen?
The idea for the Premier League was first mooted in about 1983, and it basically started with probably Irving Scholar of Tottenham, David Dean of Arsenal, and myself. We were all very similar age. Mm-hmm. We were all in our 30s, or mid to late 30s. And we realised that under the auspices of the old Football League, we were never going to be able to compete with the Real Madrids and Barcelonas and Bayern Munichs of this world, because everything was shared out pretty equally. Mm-hmm. So we realised that change had to take place. But you know, when you think from 1983 to 92, when we finally did break away and set up the Premier League, it was 9 years. Mm-hmm. And we had one attempt at it before, and we it was called the 10-point plan. And we took more income, but not all of it, and it was still shared out amongst the divisions. But the first division then took more money from sponsorship, more money from television. So we started to carve up a little bit of the spoils, but obviously not all, not like the 20 clubs breaking away. And that worked for a little while, but eventually by 92, we realised that it wasn't going to hold together really. You know, we needed to be autonomous, and we needed to be making our own decisions rather than 92 clubs making the decision.
Yeah.
We needed to keep more of the major income to be able to compete with the best clubs in Europe. The 5 clubs got an offer. The 5 clubs that eventually broke away or organised the breakaway got an offer from ITV.
Yep.
Excluding all the other clubs. We knew we could never do that because you can't form a league with 5 clubs.
Yeah.
So we realised we had to bring others on board. So we went from 5 to 10, and then eventually further down the line we invited the other 10 to join on the basis whoever was in the first division of the old football league then went to the Premier League on the breakaway. But it also meant that those clubs going down, the clubs coming up benefited, the clubs going down didn't, they were outside the league. But all the clubs went for it on the basis they didn't want to be left behind. Once you get to 10 or 11 clubs, you've got the majority. So that may have meant play each other 4 times a year rather than twice, but at least you know you've got a league. The perfect scenario was all to break away together, which is exactly what we did.
So you sat there, you know, the late 80s. When did you know that it was going to happen? When was the kind of gut in yourself that, you know, you're onto it?
Well, the five of us, and that was Arsenal, Tottenham, Everton, Liverpool, and ourselves, Manchester United, the 5 of us all got together and said, how can we make it happen? We'd had this offer from ITV. We knew we couldn't take it all ourselves. And as soon as we started to say, right, we've got to invite the others in, but who to make sure that it doesn't break up along the way, we invite clubs that we know will go for it, you know, like-minded.
Who's the first one?
Well, I think even West Ham were one of the 10 at the time.
And was it a case of, you know, the 5 founding clubs, the first 5, you say to each other, you go and speak to one club each? Or was it a kind of joint approach? How did you?
No, I think we decided how we were going to approach it. I think we did pick them off one at a time. Said, do you want to be part of it, and all the rest of it. And there was no obstruction at all. They all went for it. But I think the thing was that the five of us, we knew that the right thing to do was to still keep promotion and relegation. So even though you might have been in the Premier League and you were taking your own income and doing all the deals yourself, we still wanted that promotion and relegation, that a team could come from nothing and get into the Premier League. So that's when then you start saying, well, how do we look after the clubs that go down? Because suddenly the Premier League income was so much higher than, say, the first division of the Football League. That's when we introduced the payments for those clubs going down. We tried to be fair about the whole thing, really. We were all football nuts, all the 5 of us. You know what I mean? It wasn't a question of how much money could we make out of that. That was obviously important. Competing against the best in Europe was important, but our own autonomy was equally as important. And also we wanted to be fair and keep promotion and relegation, so that if you were good enough, you could still rise to it. You could still get it.
Was that ever a discussion point? That was
always part of it. The interesting part also was then the distribution of the monies. Then TV was always going to be the biggest money, because from the old £25,000 each, suddenly we had a lot of money being offered on the table.
Because the deal with Sky
millions.
was 92.
Well, Sky came in at the start of the Premier League.
Yep.
ITV had bid 5 million before that. But when Sky came in, of the 5 clubs, the 5 breakaway clubs, the original 5, 4 of us supported ITV against Sky because of the loyalty we felt to them, because they'd broken the cartel between BBC and ITV. So we felt that we should stick with ITV. And when Sky was new, we weren't sure whether it would last, whether it would break up. We'd have all lost out anyway. The income wouldn't have been valid anyway. So we went with ITV. But the one person who didn't, Alan Sugar had taken over from Irving Scholar, and of course he was selling the dishes, all the rest of it. So he went against the ITV and voted for Sky, and that's why Sky got the contract rather than ITV. And that was in '92, the first year of the Premier League.
So we're in the situation now where being chairman for 12 years, the foundations of the Premier League are laid. Relatively successful club, but not up there in the English Premier League.
I think the important thing for us was we floated Manchester United in 91.
91 was
in
it?
91, yeah. The thing was, I had the majority of the shares, but I was strongly in debt to the banks. My house was in the bank owned my house and all the rest of it, security and all the rest of it. At some stage, I had to become liquid. And I'd had various offers along the way from Maxwell and Knighton and all the rest of it. And eventually we decided that the simplest thing to do was, rather than sell it to an individual, was a flotation. And also that would allow the existing existing shareholders plus new shareholders to buy shares and own part of Manchester United. So we allocated quite a big distribution of those shares for supporters. But they didn't take them all up. But we had backup from institutions who were keen to buy the shares because they liked the story and they could see that it was going to be a valuable asset. The institutions, we granted so many shares to institutions, but they took up the slack of the shareholders who didn't buy in.
And what was the listing value in 91?
I think when we floated in 91, I think the value of Manchester United was 46 million. We floated at 46 million. Yeah. When I took over in 1980, Manchester United was valued at 2 million. When I stepped down as chairman as chief exec, because I was chairman and chief exec, I had the joint role, in 2000, we'd gone over $1 billion. So we've gone from 2 million to $1 billion. The Premier League coincided with Manchester United becoming successful as well. And we were able to take advantage of that because of the way Sky promoted football all over the world. And I brought in a guy called Edward Friedman to do the merchandising. And he was brilliant, excellent. Getting deals for sponsorship, he was good at own branding. He started a magazine, and the merchandising suddenly took off, became quite a big part of the business. But always the main part, or the main profit, was always through television. When Sky became involved, other competitors came in, Sky always outbid. It was vital to their growth and success that they had that Premier League contract.
So 25,000 was the first television deal when you were in charge. What was it in 2000?
Well, I think the first contract with Sky was probably worth about 300 million.
Per year?
Per year, yeah. And now, of course, it's for television, they get 5 billion. If you take the overseas wasn't worth a lot of money when the Premier League first started. And it was only through Sky promoting the game that the overseas became valuable. And I think now the overseas is as valuable as the domestic.
Well, if not more, because you've got more territories.
It's unbelievable. The coverage that the Premier League gets worldwide is the biggest, best supported league in the world.
How much is that down to someone like yourself pushing the brand? Because Man United as a brand is everywhere.
Well, it's first of all the five of us breaking away, bringing the others with us, which then set up our own autonomy. We then could do our own deals, which we did. And it coincided with Sky being the first television contract that we had, and the effort that they put into it, the number of games. Everybody was fearful at the time that the more games we gave away, it was going to affect attendances. And in fact, what it did, it actually increased attendances because people saw the game on television, they liked the product, so more people actually went to games. So it actually had the reverse effect that everybody feared at the time. So I think where we succeeded, where we were successful at that time, was that we did capitalise on our success, because obviously Alex Ferguson was a big part of it, the team winning and all the rest of it, the way we supported that in terms of purchases and all the rest of it, the way we expanded the stadium. I think when I left, it was 67,000 was the capacity. It's now gone to 76, but we were taking a lot of money, more money than anybody else, through the gate, through our boxes, executive seats, window tables and things like that. We were very innovative. And we were like the first to put boxes in. We were taking advantage of the team's success, both in terms of the stadium growth, the museum, the restaurants within the stadium, the boxes, the execs and all the rest of it. We fully took advantage of that, but we also took advantage of the commercial side, the merchandising, on the back of the success of Sky, by promoting the magazine and the videos and the shirts, and then we started doing deals with Nike, and suddenly the whole thing expanded. Now they're all doing it, but at first I think we were probably the pioneers that set it all up, and that set us apart from everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
We were getting the biggest crowds, earning the most income from the ground and the attendances, but also on the commercial side we were way ahead at the time.
So essentially, as an entrepreneur in new territory, this is a new world. After '92, the game changed. What guided you?
Just the sheer joy of expanding the club, the sheer of being involved in something new, like setting up the Premier League. Our big challenge, and I make no secret of it, was to overtake Liverpool in terms of winning things. Because, if you take it before Manchester United became successful, about 1990 was our first trophy under Alex Ferguson. Before that, Liverpool had it all their own way. They were winning leagues year after year. But I think, and all credit to them, but I don't think they really, and maybe it was the area or the spend that people had, I don't think they really took advantage of the success of the team like we did in terms of expanding the stadium, putting more executive seats in, more boxes in, and on the commercial side, making more of it.
But do you think that's because the Premier League wasn't around when their success was?
I think also, yes.
Yeah.
Partly, yes.
The success of Liverpool didn't line up with the
correct
the freedom commercially to.
Quite right. Our timing couldn't have been better in terms of we started to become successful when the Premier League started.
Yeah.
And we won the first Premier League, we won the second Premier League, we won 4 of the first 5. So we were off, but we were geared up for it as well.
Yeah.
We were geared up for it.
Yeah. And we talk about the experience at Man United. How much in terms of leadership is important in that journey from yourself and from the Sir Alex as well, from the club perspective?
I think it's very, very important. I think there's 2 aspects to it. Football supporters are interested in the football side. They don't really look too much into what goes on in the background and all the rest of it. I think we benefited because we had a very good management, and also we had a very good manager. So we were winning on the field, and we were taking full advantage of it administratively. So, but the 2 are both important.
Do you think that
very important?
Do you think that was a lot because of you and Sir Alex, similar age, similar vision, similar? You're in this together.
Both had that ambition. The main thing was we need to start winning leagues. We need to start winning trophies, and we started with the FA Cup in '90, the Cup Winners' Cup in '91, the League Cup in '92, and in '93 when we finally won the league. It was 26 years since Manchester United had won the league, and which is incredible, really, length of time. And of course, the following year we then did the double. Then 2 years later we did the double again. 3 years later we did the treble. So it was planned. And when you say to me what got me out of bed was exactly that. Wanting to make Manchester United the best, wanting to make Manchester United ahead of Liverpool from a playing point of view, and probably the best from the term of capitalising on the success of the team, merchandise-wise and everything else.
Over the 20-year journey, which was more important when it came to the footballing side of things and the financial side?
It's a good question, and I think I'd have to answer that. They're equally important, because I don't think you can get football success on the field unless you are successful financially. The game has changed today. You've got wealthy individuals coming in, putting a lot of money in on day one, and it makes it easy for the planning, because you've got the money, you can go out and buy the best players, and you almost know that not many clubs can compete with you. In my day, it was different, because when I took over in 1980, we weren't the most successful club. It took us 10 years to be successful, really. On the pitch. As I say, we were successful commercially as well. And it was that commercial success that allowed us to go out and buy the better players. And I always remember once you start winning the league and you start earning the money, I had 3 strands I had to satisfy. One was the shareholders. Secondly was the stadium expansion. And thirdly was the team. So you have to it's the balancing act, and you have to get that right. If you're not earning the income, you can't afford the best players. But if you are earning the income, you can afford the best players. You've then got to make sure that you've got the right manager in place, and he's buying the players at the right price, because I hadn't got the backup of a wealthy nation or wealthy individual behind who could bail us out if you got it wrong. So you've got to get it right. So you can't overspend. You've still got to make the profit to satisfy those three strands. And that is the difficulty. So I took pride in the fact that we made a profit every single year. And it went from sort of 5 million in 91, I think, to 46 million in 2003. So we were earning, money every year, but we were still buying the best players. And I remember in 98, we won nothing. And we went out and we bought Stam, Dwight York and Blomqvist. And with that, we did the treble. But we'd invested the money that we'd earned over the years into improving the team. So it's a question of getting the balance right.
And do you think that stems from kind of your experience back in the day? Having that foundation of, we do need to make profit. The business has to be self-sustainable.
Well, when I took over at United, they didn't do a budget.
No budget?
No. And I remember sitting down...
In 1980?
Yeah.
No budget?
No finance director, no budget, nothing. I remember sitting down with the assistant secretary at the time in the early years and saying, right, let's plan it. All we put in the budget was what, the third round of the FA Cup, the first round of the League Cup, and if we were in Europe, we got out the first round. To take the worst situation first, and then build on the turnover and everything else. And that's how we built it as a business. Yeah.
Obviously, that translates to entrepreneurs these days. What advice would you give someone out who's starting on their journey as an entrepreneur?
In football or in any business?
In any business.
In any business.
Yeah.
I think the first thing you've got to do, you've got to enjoy what you're doing. It's all about desire. It's all about hunger. It's all about what you want to achieve. Are you going to put in the extra hour? I always remember, I'd said to Alan Sugar a few years before, if ever you want to sell Sheringham, will you let me know? And Eric Cantona walked out in 97, retired, and Alan Sugar rang me up. And I was in the office about 6:30, whatever, and Alan Sugar rang me and said, I'm selling Sheringham. Do you want to take him and all the rest of it? If I hadn't been there then, you wonder whether whether we'd have got him. It's little things like that. It's being available, being around. Some people are lucky in business, but a lot of people get there because of hard graft, hard work and desire.
Life's peaks and troughs. What was the bottom? When did you feel the worst?
The bottom was probably early on when Ron Atkinson came in as manager, and we'd invested on one or two players at the time. And I could always remember we went out to the FA Cup very early on, and we lost the first round of the UEFA Cup. And I just remember thinking, oh, blimey, you know what I mean? We gambled a bit, you know what I mean? And I think we bought Robson and Remy Moses and all the rest of it. We spent a lot of money on trying to achieve that success, and it didn't happen immediately. So the early years were a bit of a struggle. If you look at United's balance sheet over those years, profit 1 year, loss, profit 1 year, loss, and it was a bit up and down. So we're probably over those 10 years, maybe just on the right side, but only just. Once we won that FA Cup in 90, and then on the back of that, the Cup Winners' Cup in 91, and we floated in 91, and we got the money from the float for the shareholders put in to build the Stretford end, which was, how would we have built the Stretford end without the money? So once we did that, and it started to expand the stadium and got success on the field, it then began to grow.
And at that point in 91, did you know what was coming through the academy?
Yes, oh yeah. Yeah, because if you talk about the class of 92, so they were all sort of 16 at the time.
Yeah.
So in 92 there were 17 or so we knew about the Nevilles. But we knew we had a few gems there, yeah. But even then it's a long...
It's still,
there's no certainties, are there? No certainties at all.
Well, you know what, it's still 16-year-old kids at the end of the day.
Yeah.
But you kind of, you knew that the float came, the stadium was being expanded, and you had something special going on.
One of the best things I think that probably we did was sticking with Alex Ferguson. Because Alex Ferguson, when he came in November 86, it wasn't an immediate success.
Yep.
He didn't win a trophy till 90.
Which would never happen these days.
4 years.
Yeah.
4 years to win a trophy. We knew how hard he was working behind the scenes, going to all the reserve games, going to youth cup games, all the rest of it, looking at the scouting. We knew how hard he was working, and we still had faith. Most of the supporters had lost faith, but they didn't know what was happening behind the scenes. They wanted him out in 90. He'd had a vote of the supporters, he'd have been gone. But we stuck with him. But also that success in 90 enabled us to stick with him.
Yep.
If we hadn't been successful then, how long more could we have held on?
Yep.
And it was a very fine margin. People talk about the Nottingham Forest game, all the rest of it. If we didn't win that, he was out. I'd actually told him in midweek, I said, Alex, forget all that nonsense. You're not out on that. Mm-hmm. But underneath, I was worried that the supporters eventually would win the day because they'd stop coming because we weren't successful and all the rest of it. Then you have to make a change.
Yep.
But we didn't. We held our nerve. Mm-hmm. And holding our nerve then, we still didn't win the league till 93. He's in his 7th or 8th year when we won the league. Would that happen today?
No.
I'm not sure it would. No. I'm not sure it would happen.
It's testimony to what you can actually happen to do if you believe in someone.
Correct.
And you back them.
Correct. So that was one of the big things I take pride in, is not panicking, not getting rid of him, giving him the chance, and look at the success he brought us.
And working with him. You know, like you say, in those situations, it's very easy to create barriers and not have that kind of open relationship. But by the sounds of things, you backed him personally with the club and shared a vision where he was then allowed to achieve what he went on to do.
Exactly.
And that's a great advice for anyone in any team, anyone who's running a team, is that, you know, you've got to have the best of people
to talk about team, because it is important. Team building, making people feel welcome, making people know that they're respected, let them know they're doing a good job. It's all part of it. People don't see that, do they? Only the people within the company know. But I do think it's important, and I think the one thing I would always say, take pride is, I always felt my staff were behind me 100%. Mm-hmm. They knew how I felt about it. They knew how I appreciated it. I also gave them responsibilities as well. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? They didn't have to come to me with every major decision, but basically I gave them the head to manage their own departments or whatever. Mm-hmm. And I think that's also important. When you talked before about management, what advice would you give? Yeah, I wasn't a control freak. I've never been a control freak, but I do like to think that I encouraged people. Mm-hmm. I gave them the head, and at the end of the day, how do you judge it? You only judge it on the success,
which you can't see in short circles. No. It's in long term.
And United's success is two ways. It's not just on the field; it's the financial side as well. And you asked me the question before, equally important. And
did you ever feel you reached the top?
Well,
as a individual as well.
Well, all I would say that in 2000, when I stepped down as chief exec, I stayed on 3 more years as non-exec chairman of the football club. But in 2000, when I stepped down, Manchester United was voted the #1 sporting franchise in the world. Mm-hmm. And that includes all the American NFL, basketball, all the leagues, and it was also voted the #1 football club in the world in terms of playing. Mm-hmm. We'd won the European Cup the year before, and we won we did, actually, people say the treble, we did the quadruple that year, really, because we won the World Club Championship, or what it was called then. It was a different name, but we beat Palmeiras. So we actually won. We were league winners, FA Cup winners, European Cup winners, and World Cup winners. Mm-hmm. That was in '99, so I stepped down in 2000. So when you say, did I feel as though the top, I don't think I could have gone out as chief exec at a better time. And I had Peter Kenyon, who I brought in 3 years earlier, to run the merchandising side of it, and he came in as deputy chief exec. And I sort of said to him, I sort of made a promise to him then, which I said, well, look, you know, when I'm 55, I'll step down and you can take over. And of course, I had David Gill, who was finance director. So when I stepped aside, I made Peter Kenyon chief exec, David Gill deputy chief exec. Mm-hmm. Peter, 3 years later, left to go to Chelsea, and David took over. So the succession was planned.
Yep.
So it continued. And I've got to say, to be fair, David's time, David kept it going.
He did, yeah.
He kept it going, for 10 years.
Yeah, on and off the pitch.
He did 10 years, and it was almost seamless, the way that it continued.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you so much for listening. Hopefully you can find your personal summit off the back of this, and we're just going to help share stories of amazing people who've done amazing things in their lifetime.